Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My presentation could be a bit technical or too technical because of the content of it, but I will try to reach you all, okay? Well, my name is very easy to remember, Pedro Sanchez, like the Prime Minister in Spain. All right, so without further ado, I move on to my presentation. So this is my bio. So I am I have lots of experience in event response, in forensics. This is what I do the most. And all this leads you to the field of research. Then from there you can move on to other fields such as threats, and then to catch the bad guys, and then threat intelligence. That is to say, what we do when we do research on attacking team who is trying to attack your system. Okay, and on the screen you see my bio. I will start by introducing a real case. This is a multinational where they do food processing. So they work with shopping centers, and then the turnover figures are high, quite high. And of course, I'm not going to disclose the name of it. Well, the incident is the following, as it says on the screen. They just check their systems and they detect that there is a web server who has been compromised. And that server hosts the email. It is an OWA, and it is a server which is being accessed by personnel of the company. They don't know about the scope of the attack. They go and say initially that they have a problem and they want to find out what they should do to solve it. And what is an incident response team? Incident response team would be kind of like a fighting team. So there is a fire and you need to have your planning in place, you need to have your hoses, water, everything that you need. So, and when you go to the company, you implement a response plan. That response plan does not avoid or prevent the incidents, but tries to mitigate it. Of course, we cannot prevent the event, but we can minimize or mitigate the attack window. So that was the first incident, but they didn't know that they had a second incident. That is to say, they had a SCADA system, and the SCADA system was controlling a number of industrial devices that at the same time were producing food on a daily basis. One of the cakes, so to speak, went through the quality checks. They could detect like a crack in it, and the thing is that had been, well, the industrial system was losing out latency, had been manipulated, and they were losing like 10 milliseconds. So 10 milliseconds may not sound a lot, but at that time was a long time. And anyway, they were losing quite a lot of money. Okay, so this was the timeline of the event. First of all, they detected that one of the servers had been compromised. Later on, we also could see that the SCADA server had been compromised. That was running on the Windows environment, and then a PLC with access to a robotic arm or to a painting line. Now going into the mail server, when we gained access, what we could see was the following. So this is what they said had been compromised. This is like a web shell or control panel. But it is not from Windows, it is not Microsoft. This has been implanted by the bad guys. So they were doing in logging, they were running commands, and they were uploading files to the server, downloading files from the server, and they were also executing SQLs. So this is quite a serious event. So we went there, we contained it. Well, containment means do not do anything hands-off, and we are going to take a look at it. I'm summarizing it, but well said, we move on to forensic analysis. We took the survey, we isolated it, and we started to check everything in it, the RAM memory and everything that was compromised. And then after that, we moved on to the hard drives. So I will be summarizing it. These are the tools that were used for the Exchange server. So we have tools such as parsers that allows us to look the logs and to search them. So first of all, you need to compile evidence to later analyze it. Then we also use specific tools and technique for the web shell, and we use the program to search for the web shell. So I have left some links on the screen. You may download this tool, and you can use this tool, as I say, to search for web shells, because attackers do not name it as web shell or malware. They just give it different names, random names. So this is a summary of the forensic analysis that we did. So we could see that the 12 requests have been made to an IP address from Iran. And then we could say, well, this could be a false flag. Perhaps that IP had been tampered, had been manipulated. But for us, that was already a way to start, well, starting point. We could see that it was from Iran initially. Then we could also see that it was also accessed from France and from the United States. But they were not accessing the web shell. And then also 6 other requests coming from another server and also from Iran. So we moved on with our analysis, and we found different other commands. So the one on the top, so that is Mimica, but they changed the name of it. The top line allows you to dump the passwords of the users who have logging into a Windows machine, and they can be dumped into plain text. So the attacker dumped all the passwords into a file, to a text file. And what did we see? We saw that all those lines were in CMD. So we didn't find the text file, but we found this program. And then the middle line allowed the attacker to become the super administrator of the mail server, so that he could go to any of the exchange servers. So the attacker wanted to spread itself and reach out many countries. And the bottom line was promoting the HTML program with its code to a route that was more difficult to detect, more difficult to identify, or to make it the home page through which they were gaining access. So what I can see here is that they use the techniques that the OS use. So this is lateral attacking. So that is to say, when one of my machines is compromised in my network, and from that machine I jump over to another machine also in my very same network. What did we do here? Well, we did cloning, we analyzed data, we gathered evidence, and then we found these files. So Trinket Service, 1.VBS, 1.CMD, gen.exe. Attackers either use their tailor-made programs, and here I would refer to full players, full scenarios in the world who are often, well, the attackers. We'll refer later on to them. Okay, we have these 4 files. The first one, the Trinket Service, well, this is a very specific name. This is a program that allows you to access to SCADA system. And this was in the Exchange mail server. And then later on, we concluded that the bad guy had uploaded this file to later on move it to SCADA system, but for some reason it didn't end up in SCADA. So this is run in a controlled environment, because if you run it in the machine that you are analyzing, that is to say the victim machine, you can ruin it all. You can destroy your evidence. So it was run in controlled environments, and then we could see what it did. And notice, this is the important bit. One of the files, 1.VBS, Visual Basic Script, which is a code that is run in every single Windows machine. Well, curiously enough, this time you could see the code. You could see what the software was doing. So this gave us a very important clue. This malware, notice what it does. First of all, identifies the Windows version which is being run. The attacker, if it could run it, if it would succeed in running it, would reach out to this level. So that is to say, here we have 2 things. Either the person has gained access remotely instead of graphically, that is to say, doesn't know the environment he's in, or perhaps the program was already automated. Second part, here uses a technique which is very difficult to use, which is WMA. This comes from Windows 95. It is included by default in Windows. So that allows you to interact with the machine like if you had a framework of commands. So the bad guy here tried to find out about the existing antivirus and to delete it. So we didn't know whether he succeeded in that or not, because when you restart the machine, then the antivirus is run. But we understand that if it is there, it's because it was run. And if it was run, it is because he intended to launch an attack. And then the second type of file is the 1.cmd. Notice that he is not using any strange code or malware that has been produced in the cyberspace. He's just using like very simple programming techniques that they kind of stem out from time or era of Windows. So you can see here this file, the third line, more specifically, where a parameter is added to an assembler file. So he uploaded a file to the assembler, and then the file was compiled. So this, I'm summarizing this. And what is actually strange is to see why he did the compilation right away, and he did not upload the .x file. So we concluded that he used this machine as an environment for development, like a development tool that he will use to distribute the tools across the organization. He did the compilation, and after compiling the file, the object and the file were delete it, and he just kept the exit file. So when that file is run, you become an administrator. That is to say, it gives you privileges as a user, and then you can become the administrator. So the next important file is gen.exe. So this time, you may notice that the code has changed. It is not CMD, it is not VBS, but Python. We compile the executable, and then we see, well, we assembled it, we did reversing to see what the program did. And well, this time we started to get a bit scared. What do we see in the first circle? We are seeing, well, I'm telling you now, at the time we didn't know. So they said, this is the manufacturer that we have in the organization, Beckhoff, that's the name of it. And he is the manufacturer that produces the software for managing SCADA system. And they said, oh, perhaps the attacker just didn't want to compromise the company just to get the information from the company, but information about the production business of the company. And then what he did here was scanning. So he opened a socket and he did a start and an end for his scanning. We understand, well, we see the ports here, therefore we understand that he has used a program for scanning the ports. Well, I'm summarizing all this, but this took us a long time. We are talking about 4 to 5 months of work. So, coming to the point, we say, oh, these ports are SCADA ports. These are the machines that are managing SCADA. We put it in different manner. So the attacker goes into the mail server, uploads the file, creates a programming environment, starts to compile programs, and then within the organization he starts to check or to look for the production system. So this is the first incidents, the first events that we analyzed. So from there, what did we do? Well, we focused on SCADA. We said, okay, we are not going to go into the IT part, we will go to the OT part. And here, I'm going to make a brief introduction to what is happening in the cyber industrial world. This is what we had before, this is what is ahead of us. So this is a new concept of attack, okay? I learned every day, I study every day. You have to do that because attackers are very updated. So we have shifted from the first industrial revolution, where everything was mechanic, whereas nowadays everything is connected. Our smartphone, our refrigerator, our sleepers, everything is connected to the internet. Therefore, what happens in the industrial environment? So this evolution, processes have been automated. In the past, I had a machine to produce cream, but now I want to see all that online. And I want to see the data that are produced at SCADA and PLC, because then I could take all that to big data, and then in big data I could add algorithms and generate artificial intelligence. Therefore, in the future I can predict in the future when a PLC can get broken But the problem is that all this is being done, from my viewpoint, with no control. This that you are seeing now is real life. Everything that is happening in the IT world will converge into OT, that is to say, the industrial world. Everyone talks about WannaCry. Imagine that WannaCry access an industrial device. And when we are talking about industrial devices, we always think about nuclear plants. And we think, oh, the Chinese will come down and will shut the nuclear power down. No. Well, may happen, but that's very, very unlikely, because these are manual processes. But imagine that an attacker accesses a shopping center, 7 p.m. There are cinema theaters, there are car parks, there are stores. And then you decide to turn down all the lighting. And then all the alarms are triggered, all the elevators, everything is stopped, is discontinued. And then I create real chaos. And this is much simpler to do than shutting down a nuclear power plant. And then, well, sometimes when you go to these OT, to these industrial places, you see that there are no antiviruses. So, for instance, I don't know, for instance, in sleepers connected to the internet, there are no antiviruses, okay? This is the reality.
And the main reality is that it's not segmented. What does segmentation mean? It means there's nothing in the middle to separate them. Now we're starting to have things. In the industrial world, we're raising awareness. You have to see that in IT world, you have to copy the security into the industrial world. And I have to speak with the manufacturers because they are to blame for this. They have default users. You cannot change the industrial device. All this summary to show that when I talk to the industrial managers, they say, no, it's been like this for 12 years. The manufacturer disappeared, but the industrial system is still working. And there's a technician who will retire in 2 months' time, and he's in charge of maintenance. That's the expert. With all due respect, he's transferring the knowledge as it was transferred in the Middle Ages. He transfers the knowledge of this profession to another person, and we have no control over that. So what happens? We are easy victims. So we need to have this type of controls in place. So, SCADA system. This thing you're seeing is a system that manages PLCs. PLCs are small devices connected to hardware, to paint, or they give the instruction to install a bulb, whatever. What do you see here? I see a computer. It's a PC. Well, this is sold. Do you know what's inside? Windows. And you say, yeah, Windows, Linux is better. No, there's no difference. It's more known, and they use Windows, but if you have Linux, it's not well protected. I have the same problem. What's Trinket? It's a manufacturer. It has security measures, but if we don't listen to them, we have problems. It's a software on Windows 10, and the operation system, the kernel, at the kernel they install a layer and it becomes real-time, so great. It works very well. But we have to analyze the machine. It's a Windows for me with a software overlay that controls Windows. And we're going to use the same procedures. I need evidence, and I find this. This is more complicated. There are techniques. We discover a file called DNS API, a file which we cannot decipher, and a DLL. We have a dynamic exe, dynamic library, and exe. Why were they called like this? What do they do? This thing you're seeing on your left is the content of the folder in which we're in. do hash to check this in the future, whether they're malicious or not. And here on the right-hand side, you see the hash for each one of them. You open the folder, you analyze it, you see, oops, this looks bad. Of course, the antivirus is not detecting it, but we're going to analyze these files. Having said this, we ask, do these files belong to SCADA software? And the person who works with that has been working there for many years. He says, well, some of them do, others don't. So we take a look and we see that yes, this was there. It's in the graphic environment. It's called MultScan. The name tells you a lot of things. And we said, are you using this? I'm not using this, but when the person that came from the manufacturer used it in order to carry out analysis. We don't know if it's good or bad, but it's been used. It can be monitored, and it could be used for bad things. And we could see that this program was not malicious, and here we found a surprise. I'm summarizing this a lot. The program called DNSAPI looks for a user process. When it's executed, they search whether the program has launched in the memory. If it is, it launches the second program. And when it launches the second program, it launches the third one. If the first one looks for the program and doesn't find it, it's not executed. So what did we do? We took the first file, the executable, DNSAPI, and we applied reverse engineering. Please take a look. Are you seeing it? It's CMD. What is this guy doing? It's not in assembler, it's not Python, it's not C++, it's CMD. Why? Well, it's CMD that the bad guys turned it into an executable to mislead. But what that executable did was launching commands of the operating system. If we take a look at the summary, that's what I've highlighted here. What does program do? It checks whether the SCADA program is in the memory. It's called Trinket Service Manager. If it finds it, it looks for PIF, with the process number that's executed in the memory. If it finds it, it launches a3.exe, and it launches that program with PIF for process and carries out an inject run, which in turn calls DLL. Can you identify the phases? I'm trying not to get too technical. So, in a nutshell, it uses a little program, CMD. It's not complicated, it's not C++, so that it cannot be identified by the antivirus. It looks for a process. If the process is there, it looks for the process number, it launches an executable. That executable injects a code which is DLL. That's a summary. And here we get to the complicated part. What do we do here? We use a product by Microsoft called SysCheck, which checks whether this executable, which is actually CMD, where in the folders, it checks whether they're good. And here we see it's Microsoft. SysCheck, it says what type of file it is. And if you pay attention to this, what do we have here? The SysCheck with the executable file. It's called C because the bad guy renamed it. It's signed. And we said, wow, there's a signature. It's signed. But if I get into detail, I see that the hashes are the same ones I had before, and I see that the antivirus doesn't have this. And it says the publisher and the company is Microsoft. What's the bad guy doing? He's taken a program from Microsoft, has injected a DLL. Is that a Microsoft program? I tell you that it is that program. They changed the name. Therefore, the name is this one. Have you ever written dear asterisk.exe in System 32? There are a lot. The bad guys study a lot. They're ahead of ourselves. And they see there's a problem code like this. I'll inject a DLL, don't take a malware. So we saw there was an app, which is this one, that allows to inject a library. Based on that, since I don't trust it, I see it's a Microsoft program, and it's so weird to me. I call them in the first line. I dump the file hash into a txt file. In the second line, it's cut. I edit the file. And this thing you're seeing here, the first square, that's the hash. There's a service in the internet called NSRL. It belongs to the NSA. It's not the NSA, it's a service. What they Every manufacturer, most manufacturers, provide them with their operating system hashes, and they store it in a database. Kaspersky, for example, all Kaspersky's programs, they have hashes, and they're uploaded into this platform so they can verify that they're good. Microsoft has the hashes of all the operating systems and uploaded here. So what I do here with this line with Python, I say, this program in Python takes the hash, the good hash, the one I've identified, and it asks the database of the NSRL, and it returns, that's the same flash. So, in other words, it's legit, it's Microsoft's, it's a program by Microsoft, it's in the database. So I'll skip this. How was the attack developed? I've made a little video. I always like to understand how the attacker acts, and I like to reproduce it for obvious reasons. Very often you cannot reproduce the whole attack, but I like to reproduce it, so I've made a little video. I'm going to play it. I'll stop it in order to explain. It's a virtual machine, but it's the same. Well, you can't see it from the back. What I'm doing here, I'll try to explain. Here there's a DLL called malicioso.dll. And then what I do is executing a program. I launch a CMD, the executable, and here I take a CMD that simulates CMD, the same they used, and I execute it. I'll stop. And this little program, when I execute it, it says no. It means that I haven't found the process, the notepad process. In other words, this program says, is notepad there? No. Well, if it's not, I continue. And here I launch notepad. And I'll execute the program again. I minimize, and I execute the program again. I abort here, I repeat the CMD, and now it finds it. It finds a PIF. If I continue to execute it, now I go to an app, the notepad process. You cannot see it very well, but you'll see that here the malicious .dll has been inserted. In a nutshell, there's a program by Microsoft that allows to insert DLLs in processes. The advantage for the attackers that they knew this and didn't need to create any malware. They used Windows as malware. It's a small detail of a lateral attack that has taken place. So we'll continue. The next attack to SCADA. This was more convoluted. It uses a program that exists in Windows which is called like this, VBS. Then it's going to use an info and a setup. And you will think, this is designed to be installed. This is the summary. This first program comes from Microsoft. It's signed by Microsoft itself. It calls info. Info downloads from the internet a file called setup.inf. This file has into it a section which allows to execute any executable program. Take a look. If we monitor it with a very useful tool called Semen, I'm a huge fan. I see high integrity level, and I see, when I execute this program, I see what it does. You see this blue line? It's executed in a hidden window. Then it says look for the directory. I import a module and launch info. I launch info, and we'll see what this info file does. But the important thing is this one. If I edit the source code of this VBS, it has parameters so that any command I include here is executed. Any command I put here, any CMD. Great. And it creates an object which is a shell. We're going to watch a video. I'm going to execute it in Notepad, but not directly. The VBS is going to do it. I launch it and it's executed. This means that that program can launch any program, not just Notepad, any program I state here. And this launched an info.x. It allows me to execute any file bypassing the restriction policy the machine may have. If I take a look at my info file, and knowing that the attacker uses CMD constantly, I'm not applying reverse engineering. I just took a text editor and I see this. I see it launches within system32. It launches a program called CMTP, and it launches a setup.inf, which apparently was downloaded before. So I look for information. It's a Microsoft program that allows to be executed in Windows and allows X installations. Let's see what it does. I'll stop it because this needs to be explained. I tried to simulate the attacker. So, using a Windows program called ramdll, and writing all this code you see here, just by including an INF file, it executes what's included in an INF file. An INF file is a text file that allows you to launch another command. Let's see. I'll execute it. Here I'm saying it's pedro.inf. Now I edit pedro.inf. And this file, well, these are parameters, but take a look at this, pedropoc. It launches a pedro.sct. It's convoluted. It launches VBS. VBS calls a legitimate file from Windows. This file calls an info.inf, and this INF launches an SCT to reach the following, to get to the following. This little file, pedro.sct, if we edit it, it allows you to inject within this file JavaScript or Visual Basic script code and execute what I state here. Do you understand? It means that if Notepad is restricted with this type of trick, I can execute it even though I've said that it can't be executed. Why? Because it's executed in an elevated context using a Microsoft project and is in a way that any valid Windows program can execute it.
To what?
I'll launch it now. This is the result. But let's imagine that instead of Notepad is any malware, which you're not supposed to. It allows you to bypass the machine's restriction. The attacker used these techniques in case it was being monitored or if the SCADA system had the danger that it was somehow closed and only the restricted the allowed programs could be installed without installing anything weird in the machine, just by using the operating system. This is another example. It's another video, but it downloads from the internet. It's an environment. I tested it here to see how in an environment in which PowerShells cannot be executed, they're executed. It's the same basis. I'm going to use MSTP in order to launch an info. If I edit this, it goes to an internet URL. This is mine with the malware, which is an SCT file. Same thing, instead of being local, it's in the internet. What do I have here? I have a lot of code in Visual Basic script, and I request the shell, which is this. It's an executable which has been serialized. I do not download an X. When the machine is executed in the machine, it will execute JavaScript with an executable program, which is this one, with a lot of lines. I'm going to launch it. And this is the PowerShell. It's a session. It's downloaded from the internet. PS, it does not stand for Pedro Sanchez. It's PowerShell, and there I can see the content. I don't know whether this is clear. In an environment in which I cannot execute PowerShells because it's closed, I can bypass it using lateral attack techniques, using commands from the operating system. And this would be another one. There are parameters. This is quite similar, but it's basically the same thing. So I already know how my attacker acts. results. I have the forensic analysis. It's taken me 2 months to understand how he acts, how he programs. You need to think about everything. Based from that, I start with threat intelligence. What's that? It's investigating whether this has happened before. My communication system with other colleagues. Have you seen this? And with my analysis, I see that yes, these techniques have been described in Twitter, so they existed. And take a look at the dates. 2013. It's always been there. Someone has to identify the operating system here. 1998, it was already in place in 1998, and the bad guys are very good bad guys and investigate, and they think, oh, I've seen this. A colleague of mine said. So we were scared, and we thought how far they reached. So this is how we reached the Cuckoo Egg. These are PLCs from Beko manufacturer. They have an embedded Windows 10. And in it, if it's Windows 10, it can be executed. It controls the production area. It controls the hardware. This is the reality. But it controls packages, number of packages, drawings, everything. So if we analyze the manufacturer information, the one which is included on the website and the handbooks, let's see how we can access the PLC. And this is how. You've seen it, right? It wasn't too complicated. It was on a Monday, or it was done on a Friday by the engineer. He was in a hurry. So you look for information, and you don't need to be a malware specialist or study engineering for 5 years. You enter like this, and that's it. Or you can use the website to get in. And it's simple. There I call the manufacturer, hey, how how's this possible? Well, yes, we favor manufacturing over production over security. So this is a handbook so that our users implement security. It's like having a car that after 120 kilometers per hour you get killed, so it's the user's responsibility not to drive over 120 kilometers per hour. And this is a problem. We also see there's a directory within the PLC, which is this one, and we see source code of PLC. They usually work in different formats. As a ladder, as a native code. You can't see it very well, but this is a code which we understand is in the PLC. It was pointing to an IP address, which would be this one here, which is the same one in Iran. So I asked them, do you have any programmer from Iran? Do you have any product in Iran? Who did this? We don't know. No one in the company. So we assumed they had reached the PLC, the machine, using these techniques of password 1, and they've used a program, and when it was launched, it communicated with this IP. Since the PLC could not access the internet, it stopped for 10 milliseconds. And people said, okay, 10 milliseconds, there's something wrong in the industrial environment or SCADA system. And what was happening was a huge malware within the PLC that caused those 10 milliseconds. And it didn't work for whatever reason. This was other piece of evidence. You have IP remotes. We have threat intelligence team, and we asked them to check what was there in those IPs, and that's what they get. A lot of malware. They're from Iran. And now we will move on to threat hunting. How do I catch this person or the group of people? And here, I use this in programming environments. When the bad guy compiled, there was a file, which is this one, .pdb, that saved the compilation route. And I said, okay, what happened here? The bad guy made a mistake. They copied the whole file, put it into the server, and they uploaded this little file. I identified X-man. In the intelligence process, you start to speak. You start to talk to everyone, law enforcement, American agencies, and they provide you with information. And they told me, oh, we know about this one. They have identified him. He's active in a forum. He's always complaining about the US. This information we gathered. This is the hunting side of the work. And based on this, together with intelligence, we tried to discover who this person was. Last year, I gave a similar lecture, and it came from North Korea. When there's a government behind it, it's very complicated. Well, you cannot tell Kim Jong-un, hey, someone there is attacking me. So with this type of things, we have this problem. This type of groups belong to governments, and it's really complicated to go further. But it's a good thing that we can identify them. And as a matter of fact, the FBI is looking for them. Some of them have been caught. What did we see? We see code injection techniques that were used, uncovered code. They used native code of the operating system. They were not using weird malware, weird objects. It belonged to a group called APT33, called like this because many servers, they have published things with that same code. So we know about this group. What else? We see that they reuse it. In the past, they've used other types of programs and the same technique of using an email server and attacking it. And we had that information. The places where they acted. And based on this information, we carried out scoring of this group. We sent it to law enforcement, in this case the US, and they arrested an individual who was in that country. You can look it up in the internet, and I could help us. I could help them to identify an attacker. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.